Welcome back. This is REFOCUS, a 12-part series on the Kerygma, and this is episode 2. In this episode, we're going to be calling Convicting Evidence Leading to Faith. Before we go any further, though, I'd like to introduce some guests that I have with us, and I'm Father Scott. Glad to be here with you. This is Alyssa Carney, and it's good to have you here, Alyssa.
Thank you.
And Kellen Carney, the son.
Yep.
Good to have you. He's a senior at Norfolk Catholic High School. Hey, so what we've been going over, what we've been talking about, the whole purpose of the series is we've been talking about the things that maybe we've heard our whole life. Maybe we hear on Sundays or we read in Scripture or something like that. But we can just kind of go over really quick. But are actually really big deal and overwhelming, these truths. And so we are focusing in on some of the most seemingly basic things, but when we take a step back and refocus on them, it's a big thing. So the first episode we went over just like the grandeur of this universe. What does it say about God? How does he interact with us a little bit too? It's amazing to think about. We're currently going through the Kerygma, which is a Greek word that means to proclaim or herald something good. The first part of the Kerygma, which we are in the midst of, is God created everything purposefully, a plan. He made it effortlessly, and we are important, we matter, and he wants to share his life and love with us. Okay. We'll come back to that in a second, but an opening question I have for you guys is, do you remember what your first memory was?
I want to say just sitting on my stairs at my house. I don't know why I remember it, but that's the earliest back I can remember with like my brothers around me.
Anything particular happening?
I think we were like tossing a ball around or something. I don't know.
Okay. All right.
I have a memory of the walls in the apartment that we lived in when I was 2 or 3.
So you guys do much fun things growing up?
Yeah. We looked at the walls.
So the walls.
I know.
And actually, I've got an earlier one. It's from the older house. I was chasing my brother, like waddling after him. I don't know why, but I just remember that because that first one was from the new house, but the second one was from my first house.
So waddling.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a good word.
Yeah.
He was kind of roly-poly.
Yeah, that's pretty chubby.
Nice. So my first memory was, I must have been like 4 or 5 years old, and we were at Disney as a family, and they have fireworks every night, so fireworks were going off, and they scared me, and so our family took refuge in a Chinese restaurant.
Yeah.
It was us taking refuge from the fireworks in a Chinese restaurant. It had red floor. That's what I remember. That's really interesting. Hey, so that's a fun, interesting question. But here's another question. It's a lot deeper, okay? So at some point in time, you found yourself, you had your first experience, and you just all of a sudden you found yourself here. In the midst of a family, in the midst of a time, in the midst of a place. If we were to step back for a second, look at a bigger picture, how did you come to be here, at this place, at this time, in the midst of this vast universe? What would you say to a question like that?
I don't know. Everything from my past has led up to this point, I guess. So that's why I'm here.
What about when you had no past?
Like me specifically, or?
Yeah.
I don't know, than the people before me. Theirs led up to having me, to my life, to being here, I guess. It just goes back.
What about before those people?
Their parents and back and back and back. I don't know.
Back and back and back. What would you eventually get to a certain place?
Yeah, you get to like Adam and Eve and.
What about you before then? I mean, what about back and back and back?
I don't know, like the Big Bang.
Big Bang? Okay, nice. Let's say anything come to mind.
I don't know, but the whole conversation makes you feel awful small.
Same with our last conversation with how big the universe is. And this one, we're going into a little bit how long it's been around.
Okay.
A little bit of the history of it. So, everything you just said, you weren't there for any of that, though. Were you?
No.
Okay. So it requires something of us to believe that.
Yeah.
You know what that word would be?
Faith.
Faith. Yeah, faith. Okay, remember what the definition, a working definition we're going to use for faith comes from Hebrews, the book of Hebrews. I got it right here. It says, faith is confident assurance concerning what we hope for and conviction about things we do not see. We'll focus on that part. Conviction about things we do not see. The first episode we focused on 2 words, God created. This episode we're going to focus on just a couple more words. We're going to add a couple. In the beginning, God created. That's all we're going to focus on. In the beginning, God created. First 5 words in the Bible, how easy it is to just pass over them. Okay. And it takes faith. Kellen, but isn't faith like blind and not reasonable?
No.
No?
No.
Anything more you want to tell us about that?
I don't know. I mean, if it was blind and unreasonable, then my faith of how I got here today could be like, I don't know, a fairy came and waved her wand or something, and now I'm here, and that's my faith in how I'm here. But like,
because you have evidence of how you got here.
Well, no, like that.
Okay.
Well, yeah, there wouldn't be evidence of that. Like I have to use what evidence I have. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I see, like, in my lifetime, from what I've experienced, like my parents have had 2 younger siblings from me, and I've seen people around me like have their kids, so it would make me assume that my parents had me and their
Is this
parents
true?
had them.
Is this something we should talk about here? Not on the show.
I don't know. So it's not. I don't know. I wouldn't call faith unreasonable. Like as far as
yeah.
faith in that goes.
This is why that definition, conviction about things we do not see, it actually, in the definition we have from Scripture, it says that there's something we're convicted about, but we don't see it. We're going to talk about some evidence today about things that we don't see because we weren't there, but now we're here in the midst of it. Okay. All right. The constant. Would you say, Alyssa, that you hear sometimes like this faith versus science conversation?
Yes.
That science. How would you characterize? How does that go normally?
I think normally it's people saying, I would rather base my beliefs on hard evidence rather than what could be viewed as superstition.
Okay, great. Yes, it's a great misinterpretation, a misperception that faith is against science and science is against faith. You can't have both at the same time. Which actually, I have that little number here. This was from 2009, Pew Research. 51% of scientists declare that they believe in some form of a God. Over 50%. And the remaining number are more agnostic than they are atheists. So actually, it's a high number of our scientists that actually have a belief in something beyond. We're going to see why today. It's because some of the things that contemporary science has shown us is actually pointing beyond to something more. Okay. I had you guys read an article.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have a little heads up?
Yep.
Okay. Tell me about the Big Bang. Who developed that idea? Do you remember?
Father, like Georges Lemaitre or something like that. I don't know. I'm going off of memory
I think
here.
he's a French guy. He was actually a priest, though, right?
Yeah.
It's actually a priest, yeah. So
priest with a PhD or something like that.
A priest with a PhD. Yeah, developed the idea of Big Bang.
Yeah.
The Big Bang Theory. And you know who kind of like didn't take to it right away, but then took to it later? Einstein. So Catholic priest. Why is the Catholics concerned about this? Well, if we believe that this whole creation is of God, then when we study it, we're studying something about Him. And so the Catholic Church has always been about learning about the universe and digging into these scientific questions. Mm-hmm. Some of the main scientists in the past are the scientists that founded geology, chemistry, all sorts of these. The founders were actually Catholic priests because they just looked, they had the mystery and the awe before this creation. Anyways, do you remember why or how it was in a general way that he discovered the Big Bang Theory?
You remember?
It had to do with, in our galaxy, the parts that were farther away from us seemed to be traveling farther away from us faster.
Oh, yeah,
than
they
the
were
parts
going
that were
away
closer
further.
to us.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like everything was going away from us, but the things that were already far away were going away faster.
So somehow they were able to measure that, like, that our universe was like expanding, and there was like expanding, and the places that are out further were expanding faster, and the galaxies were getting further apart from one another, and so the whole thing was expanding. So hey, did you bring your things that I asked you to bring?
Got them.
Yep.
Okay, we're gonna do a little example here. We got some balloons. I'm gonna have you guys make little polka dots on your balloons, okay? Like pretty
Yeah, the big one.
pretty close
Alright.
together. Those are gonna represent galaxies. Okay. Go ahead and do it. We got 3, 2, go. All right. So here's a little experiment. So you see all these little dots here. So if you blow that up now, so we'll go ahead and just blow these up. You can't really see it too well. What's supposed to happen is what you're supposed to be able to see is that as it blows up and as it expands in all directions, these little dots get further away from one another. And this is the image that he used, right? And he blew up that the galaxies would get further away. And so what he did was, this is kind of fascinating, right? If they're going further away, he can somehow measure how fast the growth of these galaxies were getting further away from one another. And so what he did was, if you go backwards in time and you calculate it backwards, and the balloon gets released, right? You can go all the way back and calculate that there was a certain moment when the balloon or the universe started to be blown up.
Okay.
The Big Bang. What do you
So that's like the beginning of the universe. Like that's the 13.8 billion years, or
13.8 billion years ago, and it was the moment when physical space came into existence. Hey, so Kellen,
I always thought the Big Bang with the balloon was when you blew it up too fast.
the Big So Kellen, you're kind of a deep thinker. So if this was the beginning at this point, like there's and it begins being blown up, right? 13.8 billion years ago, it starts to get blown up, and that's the beginning of physical space.
Yeah.
And beginning of time. What was before that?
Nothing.
Nothing. This is the beginning of physical space and time, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Nothing physical.
Can you tell me why that's kind of a fishy thing?
Because like without another factor coming into play, like nothing can come from nothing, I guess.
So if there was nothing before it, nothing before this, all of a sudden it's here.
That can't happen.
Why can't that happen?
'Cause that's not like you can't. I don't know. I couldn't have just willed myself into existence. Like I had to have my parents.
So
like,
you came from somewhere.
Yeah.
It can't come from nothing, because nothing doesn't have the ability to do anything.
Yeah.
And not only nothing can do nothing.
Yeah.
So with nothing, you don't get anything. It's kind of confusing, right? But
Yeah.
so what does this mean? This is, I call this the argument, the nothing something argument. Because if there's nothing there, yet something comes about, there needs to be something else there that's kind of like the one blowing it into existence. And if there's not, we don't get anything.
Mm-hmm.
We get nothing. And so contemporary science has shown that there's this beginning, and before that there's nothing. And so there must be sort of like the balloon blower who's behind it, who's blowing this thing into existence. And actually in the scriptures it says, when God spoke, things came to be. In the beginning, God created. And he said, let there, blew it up into existence. What do you what comes to your mind as you talk about this?
I don't know. I guess like kind of how you said in the beginning, like we kind of take these stories for granted, I guess, but there's a deeper, there's more to get into than we usually do in it, like how that's kind of how it had to happen, you know, like some people look at that and say, oh, well, that's how you believe the universe came to be, but it's like, well, that's kind of the only way it could have come to be.
There's no possible way for that nothing to actually like kickstart and to do something.
Yeah.
It needs something like on the outside who's the one who's, right?
Yeah.
Who can do that? Alyssa, what do you bring up anything for you?
I don't know. It sometimes amazes me just that how we can live our life seeing what we see. You know, like here's this table and it came from a tree, and you know the tree got nutrients from the soil, and we know the things we know, but it sometimes amazes me how scientists can go way back, you know, and look at all the forces and create the kind of things it takes to study the galaxy and the universe and have actual knowledge of that is kind of amazing.
So, yeah, it's pretty amazing. Here's one scripture verse, and then I'd like to go to the second argument that we're going to go over today from contemporary science, which is evidence from contemporary science for the existence of God. And the quote is from Psalm 90. It says, "Before the mountains were born, or the earth or the world came forth, you are God without beginning or end." Before anything came forth, you are God without beginning or end. You ready for the second piece of evidence?
Bring it on.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, go back to this image of the balloon blower, right? It's got to be something there pushing this thing into existence. And, you know, God speaks and things come to be. I'd like to... My nickname for him is the Star Breather.
Okay. Pretty cool.
What do you think about that, huh?
I like it.
Star Breather?
Yeah.
It sounds like an 80s band. Star
A little
Breather.
bit.
So, there's a law...
Can we say that in Mass this weekend?
No.
Our star breather who art in heaven.
No.
Okay.
But there's a law in, I think it's like astrophysicism or something. I don't know. It's basically the law is called entropy, but it'll make a lot of sense, and I'm going to come back to your room analogy.
Okay.
It basically says that things, when you leave them alone, don't get more organized. They get less organized. Hey, think about Kellen's room. Mm-hmm. How did you apply that to Kellen's room?
Well...
She just knows how hard it is for me to keep it clean. You know? I gotta put a lot of work into it.
So if left alone, your room would get more disorganized, right? Or take an example of like this. Like you just say like you have a bunch of Legos and you throw them. They're not going to organize themselves into something. Because left to itself, something doesn't organize itself into something. It actually goes into more disorder. It's a law. It's like an actual physical law in physics. Hey, so at the beginning of this whole thing, what's getting pushed into existence? What's been pushed into existence for 13.8 billion years, and now we find ourselves here? All this stuff. What do we find, though? Is it super disorganized, or is it...
I mean, no, not really. I don't know. Nature, I mean, looking at this room, like everything's pretty organized here, and like also even outside of that, like in nature, like
things are ordered.
Yeah,
there's order to like everything has meaning and purpose.
Well, we've been able to discover laws of physics.
Laws of physics, all the science, mathematics. Anything, it's making sense of this universe because there's order around all over the place. If there was if it was just left to itself, these things that just, and been going through time, developing, there was nothing there kind of ordering them. Here's what one of the scientists said. His name is, he's from Oxford, he's an Oxford physicist named Roger Penrose. He made a calculation one time of the odds of getting a highly organized universe such as ours occurring by pure chance. Ready? He says the odds against this are 10 to the 10 to the 130 to the 123 to 1. That might not make any sense to you. 10 to the 10th power to the 123rd to 1. Here's what this means. He says this number is so large that if written out in ordinary number notation, our solar system would not be able to hold it. If you were in a Word document and it was 10-point font and you put letter, every zero would not be able to fit in our solar system.
Dang.
The likelihood of having this organized of a place for us to live. Here's another example. There's a constant in physics called the gravitational constant. This makes a lot of sense to us because if it wasn't perfectly set like it is right now, then we would float off into space. Mm-hmm. And if it was a little bit too much, we'd be crushed. Think about if we're a little bit closer to the sun, we'd burn up. If we're a little bit further away, we'd freeze. Mm-hmm. I guess there's so many of these constants that allow life for us to exist here that some of them by like a millionth of a percent, if they were switched up a little bit, our existence wouldn't be able to live. What does it say about God?
He likes details. I don't know.
He likes details? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. When I read through this earlier, I was kind of thinking like yes, some of those things would make life life period impossible, but like if we were a little bit closer to the sun, what if we just evolved to get better with heat, you know? I don't know. So like how much of a plan was there for us to be exactly how we are? Like, I don't know, did God create us to be exactly like the way we are right now? Or was it kind of open to, like, well, by a couple degrees it might change a little bit?
What do you think?
I don't know. I would assume, because he created us in his image, we're supposed to be how we are. That would be my guess.
Hey, what's causing you to ask that question in the first place? Just because there's so many different chances, it seems like.
Yeah, there are so many different chances. And
so I think sit with that for a second and then hold that up to a God who is purposeful and put two of those together.
Yeah, I guess that if he's purposeful, he would do everything he wouldn't just leave it up to chance, I guess. Or he'd do it the way he wanted it, I guess.
Yeah, anything you think of, Lisa?
I don't know. The details are all kind of mind-boggling. There's just so many details that had to come together.
Can I add one more?
Absolutely.
Do you know what the most, it's unanimous, the most complex system in the universe? Do you have any idea what the most complex system of the universe is?
I don't know.
You're using it right now.
So your mind or whatever?
Your brain is the most complex. And here's why, okay? Yeah, Google right now, the human brain is the most complex item in the universe. You'll find all sorts of different things. And here's what you'll find. That we each have approaching 100 billion nerve cells or neurons that are firing in our mind right now as you think. 100 billion. More than the number of the stars in the Milky Way that are in your mind, your brain. Each of them can be connected directly with maybe 100,000 others, totaling some 100 trillion nerve connections throughout your brain.
Dang.
How's your mind feel now?
Big brain right there.
Whew, so let's take it's kind of a lot, huh? A little overwhelming.
Yeah.
So we started off by talking of just 5 words. In the beginning, God created. We did a little recap of we weren't there. So it's faith. And we need faith to know that. but contemporary science has given us a conviction to look at these things. We looked at two arguments today for that. The something nothing argument, and also the what would be called a fine tuning. God has finely tuned this universe for us to live in. So thank you for coming on, Alyssa and Kelvin.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, and we'll be back with our next episode soon. God bless.